Just tell me when you open up and you start the recording, okay? Just open up and start the recording. Okay. Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, this is Arib, and starting with the bad news, because Wayne won't be on for this webinar because of Thanksgiving. I think he has some family over, and so he won't be able to jump on. So Mark and I will be hosting this webinar. We have our beautiful guest with us, Jane Dunlop, and she is, I think we have to start with that, but start the recording. So Mark, we recording or not? Awesome. So, hey Jane, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Good morning from Bali. It's a beautiful morning here.
Good morning from Pakistan. I have been to Bali, and I think I told you this. I left my soul there somewhere in 2017. It's just a beautiful place to be at. So, can you just tell us something about yourself and where you're from background, and how you end up in Bali?
Yeah, sure. The journey to Bali is quite a long one, so I don't know if we've got time to go into that now. I'm originally from New Zealand. I ended up in Indonesia from university in Singapore, and then actually via the Indian Ocean tsunami right up northwest Indonesia in a province called Aceh in Sumatra. So most of my time in Indonesia has been spent in that incredible place. It's the last place on our planet that still has tigers, rhinos, orangutan, and elephants in the wild. So an incredible part of the world.
Awesome. So how you started this? Like you came here for like just business or just for fun, basically? Because mostly I've seen Australians and New Zealanders basically come here for vacation time. So
yeah, no, I'm not one of those. I'm one of the geeks that stays at home and works.
Okay.
Maybe a bit of yoga. No, came to Indonesia and straight out of university started working for Oxfam, and a really interesting team that was quite progressive at the time in very actively supporting a newly elected government after the tsunami and after 30 years of conflict, actually. So initially in the NGO sector, and that's transformed over time. But the business certainly comes from a social and an environmental starting point, and really with this big vision to set up business models that can help protect incredible ecosystems like they still have in Aceh. It's just as incredible as the Amazon, but very little known in comparison.
Beautiful. So yeah, I think you're the best place right now for environmental work. Basically, I think you can just admire the beauty there. And coming like, I think from this part of the world, India and Pakistan, plus going towards the west side, things are changing. Things are like, I think they're recognizing now that it's high time that we start need this approach now. We need to save the planet. So I think you're just there. So I won't take much of your time, and I think we will jump into your presentation, basically. And you have two businesses I've seen, but which you will be talking about āluān right now, right?
Yes, they're really inseparable from each other. How much time do I have? I'll keep an eye on the time so that
we try to finish this in an hour, but you can go as long as you like. But whenever your presentation will be over in like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, you can move from there.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, I will weave the stories of āluān and ecosystem impact together because they're both important. So awesome. I'll start with āluān, but
I will give you the screen now. So I'll take it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. And feel free if you've got questions as we go. Please put your hand up or chat. It's always nice to have a conversation. Okay, sharing my screen. Can you see that? That's visible. I actually thought before we start, I imagine that many of you do have your phones in front of you, or you can actually Google Maps. I intentionally didn't put a picture here so that you could do that. So if you open Google Maps actually now, and if you put in Simaloo, which I imagine for many of you isn't somewhere you've ever heard about in your entire life. So to spell Simaloo, it is SIMEULUE, and on Google Maps you'll see Aceh come up as the province underneath it. So SIMEULUE. Click on that, and I think you'll see Simaloo Regency come up, and if you zoom out, you will see Medan. If you zoom out a little bit further, you will see Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, and Banda Aceh also up there. So Simaloo, Banda Aceh area, that was the site of the main impact of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, just to give you a place in the world. We are working on an island called Simaloo, the one that you first looked at there. And you can see it's a relatively large island. You can sort of compare it to the size of Singapore, and it's around sort of 2 times the size of Singapore. And it's a place where we are setting up organizational approaches to really integrate sustainability and regeneration at a landscape level. Did you manage to find Simaloo there, Ari? Nice.
Yeah. I followed the instruction really keenly, so I can see that. And it's like it's under Indonesia, right? Like these islands are owned by Indonesia.
That's right. Yeah. So you've got the large mainland Sumatra, and if you think about really what's happened in Sumatra from a land use trajectory over the last 20 years, you've seen massive expansion of palm oil, which has been the main environmental pressure, or one of the main environmental pressures in that landscape. And increasingly, not only from palm oil, but really every agricultural commodity. So even smallholder owned crops, coffee, one we probably don't really want to think about because we all enjoy our morning coffee, but the encroachment of small farmers in coffee increasingly into forest areas is a huge concern, and that's one of the reasons that we've established āluān. Yeah, so the story of āluān, it starts in Aceh. It starts with this incredible place in Sumatra being of global significance for, these incredible species, and being a place that's very much under threat from all sorts of unsustainable agriculture. We established āluān as a regenerative coconut business to have a proactive, positive impact on agriculture in the region. And it's at the same time as āluān was set up, we set up a foundation called Ecosystem Impact. So āluān focuses on the agricultural side of the landscape, and Ecosystem Impact focuses on more traditional conservation activities. We have community ranger programs, and these rangers are really on the front lines, conserving the last species from the brink of extinction, and I can go into more of that a bit later. We are on Simaloo Island. It's an administrative unit of its own in Indonesia, so it's quite a good place to pilot this sort of approach. We're not aware of any other places, certainly in Indonesia, but really elsewhere in the world where this integrated approach to regeneration from a financial, social, cultural, and economic perspective is really being integrated across a landscape. Another point on Aceh province compared to the rest of Sumatra is that whereas the rest of Sumatra has been decimated to a large extent by palm oil, that didn't happen in Aceh, and that's because there was a 30-year conflict there. It was a successionist conflict between the Free Aceh movement and the Jakarta government. And over those 30 years, up until the tsunami in 2004, it was either unsafe or illegal to exercise the concessions. And so the positive side of that is that you still have 4 million hectares of intact primary rainforest and the last viable remaining habitat for these incredible species, the rhino, the orangutan, elephants and tigers on mainland Sumatra. And then out on the island of Simeulue, where we are based, you have sea turtles nesting on the beaches every night of the year. You have critically endangered songbirds, which are regularly poached for the songbird trade in Indonesia. So the integrated work that we're doing with āluān and with the ecosystem impact are focusing on saving those animals from the brink of extinction. I'll introduce you to āluān first. So we create a really high quality raw coconut oil, mostly for cosmetics and food manufacturers. The last 4 or 5 years have been the real grunt and grind startup days. And even though we have been operating for 4 years, I would still call us a startup, really. So many opportunities with developing a company in this part of the world. But many challenges as well, and it's taken us a lot longer than we originally thought to get there. But you know, Arib, as you were saying at the start, I think the world is really the world has changed, and the acknowledgement of how imperative it is for us to do something is really being felt, and that gives us a huge spur of inspiration, I would say, after being pretty exhausted over the last few years, that really it all does seem possible now, and it's a very exciting time, and it gives us a lot of patience and determination to keep going. We created a very high quality oil so that the quality of our product really aligned with our deep commitment to the environment and to the place of Simeulue, where we're so lucky to have lived with our family for the last 5 or 6 years. We all moved as a family to Simeulue when we had our 2 young children, and since January we've been based in Bali, but most of the last 15 years of my life have been spent in Aceh. The coconut oil itself is mostly for the B2B market. To date, we've had an incredible partnership with Lush Cosmetics, and we export to the UK, and we're scaling up at the moment. So we're looking for 2 or 3 more buyers that really understand what it is we're trying to do to make a difference, that are looking for a high quality, organic certified oil for their cosmetics or food products, and would be excited about a partnership with us. There's really just some information about the product. We work with 500 farming families who own 1 to 3 hectares of land with coconut plantations on it. We have drivers that bring their coconuts to our processing facility, and 100% of the oil is processed on the island, which is incredibly rare in Indonesia. Most coconut oil is bought to very large scale mills and processed there. And at the moment, most of our products are for the bulk market. We export primarily in your good standard 200 litre gallon of oil. We also have a small retail offering that we did to prove the concept. But as we scale up and we're really focusing on the farmers and our production facility out in Similu, we're really looking to partner with 2 or 3 buyers and keep it simple from the buying end. Fundamentally, āluān is about the oil, but more about what this business model is aiming to do, which is to address the very, very root causes of environmental destruction. And that is complex, as we know. And for us, it includes everything from being very conscious of issues relating to women and men, not just what are the pure threats to conservation from, for example, government decision making, which is important as well. So we have very close relationships with government because we operate on this island, and we're one of the only tax-paying companies actually on this island. We've really seen that is giving us a seat at the decision-making table, or at least some level of influence, so that environmental decisions or environmental considerations are taken into account in some of the political decision making. And then we're working with women from at every level in the company to rebalance some of the current imbalances, both in Similu where we operate and globally. āluān's sister organisation, Ecosystem Impact, is an Indonesian foundation established primarily to save wildlife in Aceh and in Similu from the brink of extinction. We have 2 full-time community ranger patrol teams. You'll see this team patrolling the beach on an island called Bengkaru, which I'll show you a picture of later. These rangers have completely stopped poaching. There were turtle nests being poached 365 days a year. In other parts of Similu, whenever we see turtle nests, they're always poached, and they're either consumed or sold. On this beach, it's quite incredible. We've been working there for 5 years now, and there's been not one single poaching incident since our team have been doing morning and evening patrols. And we now have hatchlings making their way to the ocean 365 mornings a year. So the turtles are nesting in the evenings and through the night, and then the incubation period is around 60 days. And then we have sets of hatchlings, 2 or 3 a day on this island called Bengkaru, making it to the ocean. And it's really incredible to be a part of this change. We are also setting up fisher teams to be doing patrols on neighbouring islands as well. And this really shows how āluān is integrated with the work of Ecosystem Impact. On Bengkaru Island, the rangers are mostly focusing on sea turtles. On Babi and Lasia Islands, you can see there's a picture of a bird. It's called the hill miner. It's on the brink of extinction, and we're working with local fishers and their fishing boats to set up ranger patrol teams to stop bird poaching, and working really collaboratively with those fisher groups, focusing on stopping bombing fishing and setting up locally managed marine areas around the Babi Lasia Islands. That's a cool program. Working with the fishers has been really enjoyable, and it's incredible when you actually link with the fishers and realize that they desperately want to do something about their depleting fish stocks, and the increasing challenges for them to be fishing to feed their families, and just to see the elation and the just natural excitement to work together in partnership on these sorts of initiatives is really heartwarming, and gives me hope for the future. that all we really need to do is sit down and work on solutions together and in partnership. Mainland Simalu and the surrounding islands is where we get most of our coconuts from, and our processing facility is just outside of the main city of Cinnabang. And then we have another community ranger team on Salut Islands, which is the most important nesting site in this part of the world for this huge, critically endangered leatherback turtle. And from January, February, and March each year, the leatherbacks are very regularly nesting on the beach. This program only started in 2001, and so there was just 100% poaching of these critically endangered turtle eggs prior to our ranger team being on the island, and they've managed to set up a hatchery where they're protecting the eggs, and they're finally making their way to the ocean. This is the incredible island of Bengkaru. So if you see on this prior map, it was right down the bottom there. This is one of the last islands in Indonesia that still has primary rainforest, no inhabitants, and we have our ranger teams working in collaboration with the government to patrol here. These places in the world, I would say, are the last bastions of biodiversity that we can hold on to and eventually have as places that are the sort of center point for rewilding from. And so they're really, really an important part of our world at the moment as we're going through this massive biodiversity loss. That as humans catch up, I believe that these places will be, or they are important to save as wild as they are, and they'll be important places for us to visit, connect with, and rewild from in the years to come. This is a very poignant picture for me. This is from, if I flick back to the map here, this is from Salut Island, right top left. That island, at the time of the Indian Ocean tsunami, had coconut farmers on the island. Most of the island is natural forest, but around the periphery there are these wild grown coconuts, and there's usually a team of about 5 or 6 coconut farmers living on the island. At the time of the Indian Ocean tsunami, there was a team of coconut farmers on the island, and they remember seeing what they say looked like a nuclear bomb out in the ocean, and this is the closest landmass to the epicenter of that tsunami. And ever since we've been in Simalu, we've known that this island was an important nesting site for these critically endangered, huge leatherback turtles. The island has been an important place for us to source coconuts from. It's been the site of so many challenges. We had a boat run ashore, and we actually lost the boat, but thank goodness none of our staff off the coast of this island. And for the last 6 years, we have been wanting to initiate a conservation program on the island, and just been devastated every time we saw turtle eggs being poached, because we really felt that, you know, it could have been the last few years that we see these turtles on Earth. But the program this year has started, and this is a picture of a mother leatherback making her way to the ocean after laying her nest. And this was the mother that probably was the first to have hatchlings hatch and make their way to the ocean for at least a decade on this island. And now every leatherback that nests on this island has her eggs hatch and make their way to the ocean. Yeah, I remember seeing this photo, and it is a symbol for me that the road can be a long one and a tough one, but if you do have this vision, it is actually possible. So it's a really inspiring photo for me. So the work of ecosystem impact in the foundation is the more traditional conservation work. focusing on ranger patrol teams from the community on the front line, stopping the poaching of critically endangered species. And over time, we'll be expanding that program. And it will start to interact with a coconut replanting program, really focusing on regeneration in the coconut sector in Similu. There is a crisis. 90% of coconuts are really beyond their productive lifespan, and there's no finance going into replanting of coconuts, which means that we're likely to see a competing land use come in, and really the only viable land use that would have finance at scale in this part of the world would be palm oil. So you have this dual focus where it's important to invest in coconuts for smallholder livelihoods, but there's this sort of imperative to do it to avoid a competing land use come in, which is likely to be incredibly damaging culturally and environmentally in this landscape. So time is actually running out, and we're really working on building an investable regenerative replanting program so that we can plant 4,000 hectares of coconuts in Similu and beyond. Basically, farmers do not have the financing and the time to replant. And this is the case with many commodities, smallholder-owned commodities across Indonesia and Southeast Asia. So the model that we're developing is relevant beyond coconuts to any smallholder crop, coffee, cocoa, nutmeg, for example. And the reality is really that farmers just don't have the ability to invest beyond what they're doing on a daily basis. Planting a coconut grove in 1 to 3 hectares is not a huge amount of work, but you need to grow seedlings and you need to have fencing to ensure that things like pigs and buffaloes are not coming in and damaging the coconut tree for the first 2 or 3 years. And then the model that we're developing is looking at intercropping with vegetables, perhaps turmeric and ginger and other spices as well. The other aspect of the work that we're doing is to ensure that as smallholder regenerative replanting happens, it's done side along very active conservation measures. We often see in other parts of the world that investment in regenerative agriculture, or certainly investment in agriculture, has a negative environmental impact, because as those farms become more productive and more successful, they expand into neighbouring forest areas. And so right from the start, we'll have proactive measures in place to do our utmost to ensure that that doesn't happen. And that will be done very closely with ecosystem impact and the local government, and there'll be finance on an ongoing basis to ensure that those measures can be continued over time. And that's a really important aspect of this sort of symbiotic relationship between the foundation and āluān. āluān is set up over time to provide ongoing finance to the foundation to enable it to keep doing its conservation work. And with the background in the NGO sector, I'm sure many of you know that those up and down funding cycles are one of the main challenges for conservation projects around the world. Before we were involved, certainly in the Bankaru sea turtle program that we've been involved in, there were these up and down funding cycles, which really has not only a negative impact on conservation, but also on morale and can have a long-term negative impact for getting people's support for conservation in the future if there's been these up and down funding cycles and negative relationships with conservation projects in the past. That is it in terms of the presentation. I thought I would just clarify in terms of āluān, how the business itself is set up, because it's pretty simple, but just to sum it up. So we work with 500 smallholder farming families across the island. Those families are sending their oil to our production facility because we're organic certified. Sorry, I've got some morning light coming in. I'm sitting outside because it's nice to be on the veranda, but it's a bit bright.
Looks good. It was a beautiful, good presentation, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Seems like I think you are doing a dual job there. You're trying to set up a company which can help the farmers, plus you are trying to help the environment by for stop poaching of the turtles. So two things happening. You said that you like there is a lot of poaching going around. Like I think for last 3 years you said that there hasn't been no poaching. But what the government is doing in that matter, like aren't there any institutions there to help this out? Like no poaching is allowed, or this is all private based, or government is helping, or you are paying the rangers basically?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a variety of different setups on one of the islands. So fundamentally, we have an MOU with the government to do the work that we do, and we work very closely with the Wildlife Conservation Agency. The reality is that they do not have the budget allocations at this stage to do the work that needs to be done. And so we work with a variety of international donors to secure that finance, and then we collaborate with government partners on the ground to do the work. And those actual collaborations look different depending on the land use allocation where we are working. And in some cases, it's just a general MOU or relationship with government, and then we're working more directly with customary communities on conserving those resources. In another area, there's one staff from government and staff that are co-contracted by our organisation and by government, where we're financing all of that. But really the idea of it is over time is that we become less and less relevant, and that either the government or the community group is taking over responsibility, which they already have for conserving those resources. So yeah, the idea is that it's needed now, it's urgent, and that we do it in collaboration as much as possible with government. And we do, we are probably in some cases, more active than government because of access to government budgets at this stage. But the idea is that will change over time, and that's something that we're very aware of and supportive of making happen, including really supporting the government through its own budgetary processes to be able to access the budgets that are needed.
Beautiful, beautiful. So āluān has been there for how long now?
āluān has been sort of 5 years. We've been in active operations.
Active operations. So you said that 500 families, that sounds like a big operation. Farming families and getting the coconuts from them and then into the facility. So how big of a team you have, and what's the daily operations basically looks like?
Yeah, so the setup of the farmer teams really does take time. The program's all set up organic certified, which was important for us to just have some external guidelines in terms of setting up the traceability of those supply chains. And as a young business, the market really does ask for that sort of certification. And the standards guided us to set up farmer groups, and they run quite independently. They group their coconuts together and send it to us. We have a team of 3 that focus on our field operations. Then we have our processing facility where the coconut oil is actually produced, and we have 4 to 5 people in our coconut warehouse. So you have trucks coming in, they're weighed, the coconuts are sorted and graded. We only take the highest grade of coconuts, and then they are stored for only up to a week, really, in our storage facility. So they're processed very fresh. Then they make their way into our processing facility. And in the processing facility, we have 55 staff in that facility at the moment. And then we have a management team of 5 or 6 that are more focusing on the administrative accounting functions. Yeah, most of them are ladies. Probably five of the 6 are ladies now, which, yeah, for Aceh, being the only province in Indonesia that has Sharia law and certainly has more restrictions on women in the formal sector, it's not a small thing. Yeah, and it's cool. The women I work with, all of the people that we work with are incredible, and we're lucky to have this team.
Raised by a mom, a single mom, like 2 kids, single mom, raising up and bringing us to this. I salute this. Equal opportunities. Yeah. Women are far, far, far better than men in every aspect. I believe that. So awesome. So, yeah, I was just looking and I was like, okay, yeah, the whole team is here.
Yeah, so they're all here at the moment, and we've spent the last 3 weeks together, which has been really nice. You know, we all know that the last couple of years have been challenging, and we probably have all been stuck home and doing the hard work more than we might usually, without the chance to spend time together. So this is the first time we've all got together in the last 18 months, and it's been very nice to do so.
Awesome. So coming back to the oil, is this only B2B, or you are thinking to go into the consumer market also?
At the moment, it's mostly B2B, mostly because with the day-to-day realities of working with the farming families and with the production house on a remote island are very challenging. We're still not at a break-even point. We're very, very close. We're still raising finance to scale up. So just the reality is B2B is simpler for us. I also personally really enjoy it. I love the company-to-company relationship. Working with Lush has just been absolutely incredible. So the dream is to partner with another 1 or 2 companies like Lush and to really go deep together and have a transformational impact in a very deep way in this place. So I think there's more that we can do by having fewer partners in that respect. That said, I think the time will come where we've stabilized, we've sort of proved concept, and then there'll be opportunities to go another way, perhaps with different partnerships, and to take things in perhaps a more creative, direct-to-consumer direction. At the moment, it's just not really a reality to do that.
No, that's business basically. Whatever
yeah,
makes
exactly.
sense right now. Yeah.
Exactly. You've just got to stabilize. I mean, if you think about the coconut also, and I haven't talked about the production process, but if you imagine an old coconut with the shell removed, you get a very sort of white flesh. So we're using old coconuts to make oil. You sort of you grind it down, grate it, squeeze the milk out, and then our oil is spun. And that's how you get this raw product of a very high quality. Where we're differentiated from something that might be called a cold pressed virgin coconut oil is that many cold pressed oils are, yes, cold when pressed, but there has been a heat process prior to that cold pressing. So when we say we're raw, we're true raw, and that we're the fat is separated through a spinning process. But most virgin coconut oils, even when they're saying cold pressed, you don't get that high nutritional value from being raw.
So my next question will be, is there any competition right now of āluān there doing the same thing or kind of the same thing in the area, or you are kind of the pioneers in that area?
Yeah, pioneers in the business model in this area. There's another company that makes a coconut flour. So there is competition around access to the raw material, the coconuts. But in terms of this type of business model. Across Sumatra, you have some carbon projects which are doing some incredible work with re-wetting peat swamps and rewilding areas, but there's very few, if any, businesses that are taking the approach that we are. You see a lot of social business models coming out of Jakarta and certainly in Bali, but not people in rural areas in Sumatra.
So next thing, like you said that you're only exporting it to the big exporting is to UK. So any place else other than UK? I think I saw somewhere. Are you in Australia? Or any part of the world like other than UK?
So the main reason that it's gone to the UK is basically because we had a buying partner that was really taking most of our production capacity, so it just hasn't been a reality for us to go too far beyond that. But we have exported to China, Australia. We've just sent shipments off to France and to the Netherlands. We're just developing a new buyer partnership in the US. So as we scale up, we're just going into initial relationships and partnerships with a number of different companies and working through some 2022 initial orders. But yeah, to date, we've exported to those countries. I said China, yeah.
So coming to the branding part, if I see somewhere, this will be in this container, right? Sitting somewhere in this container, the branding. And what does āluān really means, basically? I should have asked this before, but yeah. So where the name came from?
Yeah, so the name's it's actually a beautiful story. I sat down with a gentleman called Pakiro, who's probably in his 70s, and he's a language expert in a language called āluān, which is a local language of Similu Island. And, you know, trademarking can be a real challenge. So you're looking for a name that's a bit different, but a bit perhaps not too weird, as well as something that represents your business and has meaning. And I spent 2 hours just sort of trawling through this handwritten notes that Pakiro had written, and came across this word āluān and asked about it. And it's beautiful. It's the trajectory that, for example, a body of water might make. It's also the front of a ship. So for us, it is sort of akin to oil and the path of oil, or a watery substance, an oily substance. And it's also the direction that you're heading in, and where you place your attention and your goals and your purpose in life. So that's what it means. It's your trajectory, but in a broader sense.
Beautiful. And I will encourage our audience members, if you have any questions, please write them down and send it to us, and we will ask Jane here. So we'll continue here, and if you can hear us, just put 1. And if you have any questions, just write it down and send it in the question bar, and we will read it out to Jane. So coming back to this, Jane. Yeah. Yes, Mark? Sure, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. Shall I go straight into the answer?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm from New Zealand. And yeah, where does the story start about how I ended up here? So one poignant memory would be, so I studied law and accounting at university, and I was about to head into my honours year of law, and my law colleagues were all receiving these bottles of champagne from the big sort of 5 law companies, and I had really enjoyed my law degree, but I knew that the law company track was definitely not for me. And coming from little old New Zealand at the end of the world, I had this image of something like the United Nations in my mind, but no idea how you might sort of get an opportunity like that or even start. Like, it was, from where I was, it was like another complete world away. I could think of places like The Hague and Geneva, but really nothing else. And by chance, my now mother-in-law cut a small little newspaper clipping out of one of the back pages of the newspaper that said something about, are you interested, are you a youth between so-and-so years of age, 19 to 23, looking at working in developing countries and adventure as well. I put my hand up to spend a weekend at, well, it was actually the army base with a development organisation that was about youth development for development. Got dropped off in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night and told to make it home for breakfast. And that was this taste of what it might be like to be doing volunteer work on the other side of the world. It was so much fun, and we all spent the night sort of sleeping under tarpaulins. And within 6 months, I was in Sabah in Malaysia doing this youth volunteer work. And it was great, and it really solidified that this was the type of on track with what I might want to do with my life. And I remember finishing that work, and I actually went traveling on my own. I think the rest of the group were off partying because they'd spent 3 months in the rainforest and wanted to get back to normal. And I had been forever changed, and that was the last thing I was interested in doing. So I hopped on a bus, traveled through Brunei Darussalam, and then on a bus through Sarawak. And another really poignant memory was just seeing this burnt, charred land with these dead, burnt trees sticking up through the landscape. And then there's bright green, what I don't even think I knew at the time, but palm oil seedlings popping up. And it was seriously 13 hours on the bus, and that was all you saw. And that really stuck with me. I went back to university, finished my studies, got a scholarship to go and study in Singapore because I just thought that would be a really good opportunity to be in the region and perhaps see what some of the working related opportunities might be. And really it's all just flowed from there. From Singapore, I did some work for an incredible Australian academic who was doing a lot of work after the tsunami, looking at vulnerable groups and their access to opportunities. And I was very lucky straight from Singapore to get a job with Oxfam. And really that's led to most of my career being Indonesia-based from straight out of university. I was very lucky for 5 years to be involved in a global team working on conservation projects around the world, Ecuador and Mozambique, which really, I think what stood out to me through those experiences wasn't the differences, but how similar the patterns of environmental destruction and just certainly the impacts that colonialism and this expansion across the world has had. So I know that particularly myself coming from a social background, we often talk about the importance of context, but the similarities and the patterns that exist across our world that are continuing to have an impact just because of the way that our world is set up and our institution is set up. That's very much the case in what my global experience really showed. But yeah, otherwise mostly been in Indonesia. Was in Aceh for 7 years, and then Bali for 5. And then when we had children, we had spent most of the time on this little island called Simalu, in a little hut, not far from the beach, with our kids sort of running around naked and climbing trees and learning to use knives. And then, yeah, this year we've been a bit more civilized, and the kids are at school in Bali, and we're getting a bit more balance in our life. A long answer to your question, but thank you for the question.
And yeah,
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, so I have been in Indonesia for 15 years now, so I guess I don't really see people in Aceh or on the island as like local people are different. I know my skin's still white, but I really do feel part of the community. And obviously I'm not the same, but we're all different in our own ways, aren't we? I think one of the reasons that our work is accepted or taking place in Aceh is that we are locally based organizations. Yes, we have expatriates and white people involved, but the organizations, the companies, all founded in Aceh, and most of the team are Achenese or certainly Simaluan out on the island. I feel incredibly lucky to have had the opportunity to spend this time in Indonesia. It has taught me so much about community, about really living from the heart, about prioritizing personal relationships and community. So incredibly, incredibly grateful for that. And the people that we have partnered with on this business are our friends, colleagues that we've known for a long time because we've operated in Indonesia for a long time, and we have mutual trust. And then our staff are from in and around the communities that we work in. So it's not so much a matter of sort of coming into Aceh or coming into Indonesia and looking, or having this idea for a business and looking for people. But I would say it's evolved more organically, and we've been living in place and just built that around us and in partnership with other people.
and I think the Muna is from Aceh, Indonesia. Yeah, hi, it's Muna from Aceh, Indonesia.
Muna, okay, right.
Yeah,
Muna di Aceh.
I didn't get that, but
I'd love to know where you're from. Thanks for joining the call. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Muna.
So I think I heard your whole story and how you end up in Bali. I think in the whole chaos, you find your way. So that's just beautiful. Okay, I have one more question for āluān, basically related to that. So you have the production, and from these farmers, are you thinking to enhance this? You going somewhere else for the production, or have you something in mind to expand the business and moving away from this island, or keeping this island into a different island, go to a different place, basically?
Yeah, there's a lot of scope for expansion at the moment. I think I said we're really still a startup, so we're focused on stabilizing. We are producing, in terms of scale, around 600 litres a day at the moment, and we want to scale up to 1,000 litres a day at our current facility. That gets us into a stable, profitable position, and then we can reflect on going into other products. For example, you've got charcoal, you've got water from the coconut itself, so expanding in that way. So you've got sort of downstream, upstream. We can look at moving into soaps, shampoos, etc., and some of those higher value products linked to the brand. For us, the most important thing and where we will have the most transformative impact on nature and the planet is this coconut replanting program. So our focus is on stabilizing the production side of the business, getting up to 1 ton a day. That's our mantra. And on raising the initial investment needed to get the coconut replanting going at scale. Once we get to 1 ton a day and we have that replanting project underway, regenerative replanting and conservation, then we'll have this pilot model that can be replicated, morphed, expanded onto the mainland. you know, it really would be a dream to go back onto the mainland where the turtles and the orangutan and the tigers are on, and to be focusing on the periphery of the Losa ecosystem. And that is in our sights, and it has been from day one. But it's time to stabilize now.
Beautiful. Okay, last question from my side. I think then Mark and the audience can comment. So I think we have gone through everything. In next 10 years, where you want to see both of your businesses? I think there are two of them. āluān being the money wise, it's there. So where you want to see āluān and where you want to see ecosystem impacts, basically for the poaching side, and there is no poaching there, and there are better standards to follow. So where you see yourself in 10 years, where you see both of these businesses?
Yeah, so great question. Similar and the Banyaks will be thriving. You know, that will be our first pilot. And I really can see this forest with songbirds returning to it, and around this sort of central forest area where you have wildlife thriving. Around that you have coconut plantations, healthy soil, intercrops, and really this traditional agroforestry method, with you know, increasing value for products that are really having an impact on the environment, and the economics really starting to stack up on enterprises like this, because at this time, you know, the economics are challenging, and when you're starting up, you know, you face all of the challenges at once, including turning this, you know, big global ship that's been in this trajectory economically and really needs to be more regenerative and sustainable. So from an economic side, in 10 years' time, I see that being much easier than it is currently. So by that, I mean the economic viability of regenerative, sustainable businesses, and then just being part of the norm, really. I think 10 years we'll be on a completely different planet.
That's a beautiful goal. Yes. Okay. Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mark. So our main buyer to date, and a buyer that has been absolutely incredible. They've visited us a number of times. They've supported with finance for our coconut replanting pilot, when we're in need of working capital to finance their order. They're incredibly flexible. Is Lush Cosmetics. It's based out of the UK, and we are the priority supplier for their universal soap base. So basically, if you buy soap from Lush, most of that is from āluān coconut oil. We really have been favoured by cosmetics companies. There tends to be more of a ability to pay the price of our products, which, you know, because we're internalizing all of the externalities in the business, because of the higher quality, it's not a commodity product, and so you're not going to be paying your commodity coconut oil price. The cosmetics industry, what we're seeing is taking more of a leadership role in terms of switching out of commodities like palm oil, and very proactively looking for regenerative companies for their supply webs. We're actually selling our flour as well, which was used in scrubs, but mostly for shampoos, for soaps, and as the base product, even for things like mosquito repellent. It's used in some face moisturizers and in sunblock. Really, where you have an oil base, you can transition it to coconut oil. And then in the food sector, we're really favoured by raw food companies or healthy health food companies that are looking to establish a regenerative, fully traceable supply chain and be able to share that story with their customers. But it does tend to be cosmetics that the majority of our buyers. Can I answer any more on that, Mark? Feel free to ask more questions.
Yeah, no. So I just want to say one more time to the audience, I think we'll be wrapping up in about 1 minute because I think we're end of the hour. So, and if you have any more questions, please send them away. And while they are doing that, or they don't, so I think any parting words from you, Jane. And my last thing will be like, what we can do to help you, or what we can, as a community, each can do to help āluān or anything like.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mark, for the offer of support, and Ari, thank you also, and to the EAT community. Amazing to pull together a group of like-minded individuals and all be supporting each other. As we scale up, really the focus and the biggest challenge for us, aside for the operational ones, have been access to investment finance. So if there's anyone in the community that is interested in investing in a regenerative, high-risk coconut oil business in Indonesia, no.
You will be surprised of finding. Yeah, they will.
But that's always a need for us, and our time really focuses a lot on the operational side. That financing is always a reality as well. So at the moment we are raising finance to scale up from 650 litres to 900 litres, and we actually have 50% of the finance in place already, with a request from the financier to get match equity finance. So we're looking for some equity, quasi-equity. And then, we are always really interested in linking with like-minded buyers for the oil. We can export anything from 500 litres up to any country in the world. So if you know of any buyers out there that might be interested, as I said, cosmetics buyers tend to be more appropriate or better suited just on the past. I know that companies like Beyond Meat, for example, have just moved into Indonesia. So these really innovative new food-based companies are companies that we'd really love to reach out to. We really do spend a lot of our time working on the operations and very little reaching out to the community. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity today. We don't do a lot of this, and I probably don't do enough of it. So linking up and networking, those sorts of things actually do mean the world to us. So thank you so much.
No, it was just, I think we are grateful to have you on for this, and it was just a beautiful presentation, a beautiful thing you're doing. Being a law student and doing law, coming to this thing, I think I will salute you for that, and you're just doing a great job. We will be promoting this on our website, and I will be sending you a link for that. And surely, I think Wayne will know some people or some big businesses in cosmetic industry here. So let me talk to him on the next team call. So yes, so we will make sure what we can do. And thank you so much for being on with us. I think this is parting ways now. Yeah, thank you so much for being on.
Wonderful. Love to Pakistan.
Yes.
Thank you so much.